My name is Jannika, and I'm very excited to be here today to talk to you about social media and how social media can drive positive impact. This topic is very close to my own heart because usually when we talk about social media, we talk about all the negative things that social media brings with it, such as cyberbullying or fake identities or bots or even increased suicide rates we see in teenagers. So I'm very happy that I get to be here today to speak about all the positives that social media can bring with it and the impact we can get from social media. Very briefly about myself. So as I already said, my name is Jannika and I'm the marketing manager at Greenwalder. I have worked with marketing for about 10 years or so. And for the past years, I have been very invested in sustainable business and how to make marketing more sustainable and more responsible. So that's my own background. But without further ado, let's talk about some social media stuff. We cannot really talk about social media without first talking about how much social media reaches people. Every day, about 4.8 billion people use social media, and that is more than half of the world's population. That makes, of course, social media the most powerful media tool there is in the world. And it's very important to pay also attention that in the past years, we have always associated that social media is mostly used in the Western countries, so in Europe and in the US. But in the past years, social media has actually grown more in Asia and Africa, where it's rapidly growing every year. So we are reaching very much new audiences in countries that we are not used to associate with social media. Social media has also made it possible for us to get more information than ever before. This means that we have gone from this. So we all probably remember this newspaper way of getting information. This, of course, means that when we get information from newspapers, there's been always a very limited space of how much information can be given one day, because newspapers were published once a day, and newspapers have very limited space per article. So the editors, the journalists, and the publishers, they have had to decide what do they put on the newspaper and how much space they can give to that. That, of course, means that, for example, you have to prioritize, if something happens in your own country, you have to prioritize that over what has happened, let's say, on the other side of the world, unless it's very, very important, because there has been limited amount of space. Well, of course, today we've gone from this to this. We don't have to worry about limited space anymore. Now newspapers have unlimited space. They can go online. They can post these minute-by-minute feeds about what's happening right now. If there's elections, if there is some important meeting that is going on, you can follow minute-by-minute what is happening, who said and what. You can follow all kind of news. You can find news all over the world just by clicking a couple of times. In the past years, it's developed even more, so you don't even have to go to the newspaper's website anymore to find this information. You just simply go to your social media of choice, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Instagram, even TikTok these days, and you just follow the newspaper you want to follow, and you get all the information from there. This, of course, also means that people have more information available, so they can educate themselves much more than they have been able to do in the past. So pretty much whatever you want to educate yourself on, you have content for that, you have information, and you have it in your fingers with a couple of clicks. However, it's also important to notice that media is no longer controlled by traditional outlets, meaning these newspapers, all kind of magazines, and so on. This can be very much seen when we look at some statistics, which seem a bit crazy, but they are true. Every minute, Snapchat users share over 500,000 photos. More than 120 professionals join LinkedIn. Users watch over 4 million YouTube videos. Over 400,000 tweets are sent to Twitter. Instagram users post almost 50,000 pictures, and over 500,000 comments are made on Facebook. Every single minute, every single hour of the day. And if we think about how many news are shared and we compare it to this, the news are nothing. We have so much content and we have so much power as individual people to post everything we want that despite news being very much available today, it's still nothing compared to the other content we have available. This of course means that independent people get to spread their content, and more importantly, they get to spread it for free, which has not been the case in the past. Big corporations and media outlets no longer control what is being published, and now independent creators such as filmmakers or activists and so on, they can control what they put and where they put. And interestingly enough, anyone can become a content creator. It doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter what is your background, it doesn't even matter what language you are speaking, because everybody can become a content creator. Here we see some examples. For example, the Living the Change documentary that's been made by Happen Films, which is rather small media company that are making different kind of documentaries. In the past, if they would have wanted people to see their film, they would have had a couple of options. Would have been contact some media companies who have movies put into movie theaters, who might have probably said no. They could have contacted TV channels who also could have said no. Or even in the past years, they could have contacted Netflix, who also could have said no. And then their only option would have been to, I don't know, rent a movie theater and try to get people to come to watch their documentary. But because of social media, what they did 7 months ago, they put that documentary on YouTube. And so far, they have gotten 410,000 views. For free, they have not paid anything. They have just made sure that their tagline is good, their tags are good, people find their content, and that's how they have gotten all these news they would have never gotten before. Social media also gives voice to communities and people who wouldn't get space on traditional media. This doesn't mean just documentary makers or activists or professional content creators, but this means us in our everyday lives. Here is some examples from Paul Cufaro, who posted to TikTok earlier this year about this red tide that hit the Florida coast that didn't actually get much space on traditional media. It was not reported anywhere, even if a lot of fish and a lot of sea animals were dying. But Paul started to take videos of what we see, a lot of fish dying, baby manatees dying, and started to post those on TikTok. And we can see here that his best video got almost 50 million views because people were concerned. And after that, traditional media had to also start to address this issue that they were completely ignoring before this. And Paul's example is, of course, not the only one. We have these from all around the world and for all kinds of issues. Right now we see the human rights fights going on in Iran. We see Ukraine's war. We had Australia's bushfires. And we have tons of examples when people, normal average people, just use their smartphones and start to send tweets, start to send videos, and suddenly a lot of people become aware of these things. This also helps marginalized groups, such as people of color, indigenous people, and gender minorities who are traditionally getting much less media space than many other groups. So this is also very good for these marginalized groups. And of course, social media brings us new leaders to follow. I think we all know Greta Thunberg by now, but she's not the only social media activist we have these days. So we have, for example, Isaias Hernandez, Sarah Robertson-Barnes, and Autumn Peltier, who are just as big activists using social media, all young people who have just taken the power of social media and start to make change. The interesting thing is, here once again I want to underline that anyone can become a social media activist. In the past you would have had to have political connections or money or some sort of power that would have driven you, but these are just average people. Greta Thunberg was a high school student when she started her campaign, and all of the others, they're also just average normal people who just started to speak out on social media and connect with like-minded people, and people found what they say interesting and wanted to follow them. And this is the beauty of social media. We can really do this. Which leads me to our next point, which is that social media brings people together and builds communities. This means that people find like-minded people and they get together to reach their common goals, whatever those shared common goals might be. It also makes cooperation beyond country borders and other borders possible. And in the past, that wouldn't have necessarily been possible because, well, it was very hard to connect outside of country borders. You would have had to send emails, or you would have had to even send letters or call, which was very hard. Now we just have all the people in the world in our fingertips, literally, through our phones. And it also makes people feel like they are part of something. So when we all have some worries, let's say, about the environment, it's very easy to feel that you are alone, you are fighting the windmills alone. But when you find all these other people online, you feel that you are part of something, and no longer you are alone, but you are part of the group who all have a common goal, and you can do it together. One of the best examples, of course, of this is the climate strikes that started from social media because Greta Thunberg wanted to do something. It started in Sweden, and very quickly, because of social media, people all around the world, from the US all the way to Australia and all countries in Europe, started to take part of this climate strike. And it became probably the biggest thing there was just before COVID. Of course, not everybody has to start a new climate strike. That's not the only way of doing things. We also have these smaller groups that has such as much effect as these big ones, because people innovate in them, people talk about important things, and people just come together with like-minded people to solve problems. Here we see some Discord servers. Discord is usually more associated for gamers, and it started as a gaming platform. But these days, when you start to check how many servers you have for environmental activism, it's tons and tons of channels. And no matter what time of the day you check it, there's always people online. They are always discussing about environmental issues, what they can do, finding examples, what they are doing. And yes, it's also, so not everybody has to start climate strike. They can start a Discord server, and suddenly there is 5,000 people discussing what they can do for the environment. And my last point is that social media gives people a platform to demand change. This, of course, means that we now have direct link to companies, because in the past, if you wanted to give feedback to the company, what could you do? You could maybe send them an email, you could call to their customer service, or maybe if it was a store, there was this box in the store where you could go and drop your little ticket where you have written what you don't like. And pretty much never anybody got back to you. The best you could maybe do is try to send to newspaper this very well written piece of information that somebody is doing something they shouldn't, but that was really it. These days, it's very different, because you can go online. Here we see a couple of examples, what you can do. Obviously, you can do petitions, you can leave comments on social media. Sometimes we see this, that some company has, they're doing something questionable, and everybody is commenting on their social media. Everybody is commenting so much that they are, in the end, if they don't want to address that, they're turning off their comments so nobody can comment that anymore. They're blocking certain words or so on. But here are a couple of examples. One is from on the left. It's from Greenpeace. Their campaign. They targeted. They wanted to get some change on Shell, the big company, but they have noticed that they didn't get Shell to change anything if they went to Shell and they said, hey, come on, change things. So what they started to do, they made a social media campaign targeting Shell's customers. Here is an example of Lego. So they start to talk to Lego that you have to talk to Shell because this cannot go on, otherwise you are unsustainable. In the end, Shell had to change some of their policies because their customers had to go there and say, like, do you understand, we get now bad rep, like we have to now consider if we can work with you anymore. Of course, Greenpeace is a big organization, but it doesn't mean that if you are just a single person that you couldn't do anything about this. Here we see this independent content creator who made a video, very simple video. She's just talking in the video about addressing issues on fashion for some brands that she considers unsustainable. She's explaining why she considers them unsustainable, and then she's giving them tips how they can become more sustainable and more transparent. Then she went and she tagged all of the companies and shared this on their social media wall. And people started to comment underneath it and in different posts. First, it looked like these companies are not doing anything, but a couple of months later, many of these companies actually came out with more transparent information and reports about how they have changed, where are their clothes actually produced on, and so on. So actually, this independent person who just made this video managed to make some changes, not necessarily like life-changing big things, but at least these companies became more transparent because they were put a lot of pressure on. So, just to summarize, how social media can make positive impact. By reaching more people than any other media outlet out there, offering more information to people than we ever before had, by moving control of media from traditional media outlets to individual people, by building communities and bringing people together, and by giving platform to demand change. Well, this of course sets demand for meaningful, impactful, sustainable related content. And we as society, all of us, we are responsible for making sure that we use social media for that. We all probably who are here, we want to have more sustainable social media, we want to have more sustainable content, but what we often do, we just expect that other people do it. And here the best key reminder is that you have to be the change you want to see in the world. You have to start doing that. You don't necessarily have to become activists on environmental things, but you can start sharing things, you can start talking about things instead of just sharing pictures of your coffee cup or your cat. Because when we do that, we harness the power of social media for good, and we are all part of the change because we as society have to make the change. That was about it. I'm still going to say a couple of words about Greenwalder, so the company I work for. We at Greenwalder are trying to do this. We are changing the way social media is being done. So we are social media for sustainability. Our goal is to bring together people and companies and organizations who all want to see this change in the world and build a place where we can really discuss all these topics and all these sustainability issues. Thank you for coming to listen. Merci beaucoup.